So the streets are talking, Victor.
Hey,
Get him, daddy.
don't you walk on me.
So what are some things you've seen repeat over the past few years?
Well, listen, when I was a kid, we had tremendous mullet runs, like tremendous mullet runs. They've dissipated. And every once in a while you get a decent mullet run, but I haven't seen a mullet run like that since. And then you have like years the Lafayette's come in, years they don't come in, years the Bay Anchovies come in, years they don't come in. So it's always revolving and there's always things going on. But bass, as a rule, will always find the most dominant bait around to feed on. Because if you had, for arguments, little tiny pods of bunker that weren't worth much, but you had acres of baby porgies on the bottom, you can bet they're feeding on the baby porgies. It's a much easier catch. They're not going to exert energy to chase stuff that's not worth it,
So you said you got your first 50 by the age of 15.
Yep.
How many more did you get after that?
I got so many, I wouldn't even say it on here. You want me to put it in the right perspective?
Yeah.
I mean, everybody knows this isn't a secret, but every time I talk, they give me a bunch of crap about it. But if you took the top 5 or 6 guys that you've had on your show bass fishing, I've caught 5 times that many 50s than all of them put together.
Wow.
How's that?
Didn't you tell me
I have 13 fish over 60.
Wow. That's crazy.
Not really.
What was the biggest?
It's only crazy. It's only crazy if you didn't live that lifestyle. Like I had a really prominent fisherman from my area. I won't mention his name, and nothing against him. He's a good fisherman. But one time he put in print that his best day was 38 fish from, like, I would say very high 20s to like in the 40s. I've done that so many times I can't even count. And I have it on video. Before my first book came out, we videoed stuff. I have bites. I had a bite 1 week, in just 1 week. I had a little over 600 fish. I had like 25 fish over 45 pounds. Yeah. But you have to know how to fish like that to catch like that. And what I mean by that is when I talk to the average fisherman, first of all, they couldn't do what I do because they didn't have the connections I had. Like, when I bunker chunked, I'd go out with 150 bunker a day, and I'd use most of them. Think about that for a minute. So if you went out with a dozen or 2 dozen bunker, how many fish could you catch? If you went out with a dozen eels or 2 dozen eels, how many fish could you catch?
2 dozen?
Were you expecting to catch a lot of fish? Were you expecting not to?
Yeah. Hey, everybody, listen up. We're launching something big for all of our Brooklyn Fishing Club members. It's the BFC Members Only Zoom series, and we're bringing back some of our most legendary guests from the podcast. Crazy Alberto Nee, Paul Dixon, Bouncer Smith, just to name a few. These are live, exclusive Zoom calls where you can ask questions, hear stories that didn't make the show, and connect with these legends in a private, members-only setting. Want in? Go to brooklynfishingclub.com and join the club today. You can also check out the full lineup of upcoming Zooms on our events page. It's free for members, but spots are limited. Don't miss it.
I bought my first house cash at 19 years old from catching striped bass.
Wow. From doing it commercially?
Yeah, that's what I did. I was a pinhooker for the first part of my life till they shut it down.
So you're fishing commercially from shore?
Yeah, boat, shore, bridge.
Oh, okay.
I fish that. I have no preference to fishing. In other words, wherever they swim and go, I will fish for them in whatever method it takes to catch them. Like, I talk to guys that are like, oh, they're purists. They only plug fish, or they only do this, or they only fish that. And my response to that is, then you only catch fish and they respond to that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you, in those days, I fished. In other words, if you're at a job, I'm out catching fish. If you're sleeping at 3 a.m, I'm out catching fish. If you're at your buddy's wedding, I'm out catching fish. If you're at your funeral, I'm out catching fish. So I don't give a shit about none of that stuff. I'm catching fish. I was possessed. I caught fish, and I catch fish in numbers. And I normally I don't go real public with that, because in today's world you get a big hit. But I have issues with the, like, I listen to guys tell me that the commercial guys kill all the fish. Not here, they don't, because if you gill net, You can only catch the window mesh size of what you're fishing for. If you got a bunker net, you're not catching 40-pound bass in that net.
Yeah.
It's impossible. So they're very naive on stuff, and it's hard to teach the world. Like I have a big issue with big bass and eggs, in all of nature, and I don't care how you cut it, in all of nature. The young to the early middle age produce the healthiest stock always. They're also the most in numbers because it's a pyramid. The older fish, there's less. The younger fish, there's more. So when I hear people tell me, "Oh, you killed a 60-pound bass that was 3 million eggs," and that gene stock. Well, that's true, but you know what? That fish spawned 15 times already. Its
Yeah.
gene pool is in the water, and there's 100 million eggs from that fish. So we're fine. If you're killing those 30, 35-pound fish, those real healthy, robust fish that produce really good stock, you're doing way more damage than killing a big fish.
That's
So they need to
interesting.
get their science in order.
Yeah. What do you think of the current regulations these days?
I think they're ridiculous.
Why?
Well, a bunch of years ago, I did a talk, and we had a senator there, and we had a bunch of all the people that are supposed to know what they're talking about. When they wanted to make the law 28 inches, I said, if you do that, I said, in a bunch of years, you're going to be left with a bunch of small fish and a handful of monsters, and that's what we're left with right now. And there's a reason for that. So it's very hard to explain. Like there's too much politics in fishing, and understandably, like I'm not against all of that. I have no reason. Like I don't hate commercial fishermen. I don't hate recreational fishermen. If the fishery was healthy and taken care of correctly, there's more than enough fish for everyone, in my opinion, as long as you're not abusing it. You know. So, like I did a show one time, and I told on a show I was talking about. To me, we have some good models in the world of fishing. What works. Like Florida brought their redfish back, their snook back. Alaska has good, and no one follows these things. So, guys were like when they came out with the 28 to 31 inch. Now think about that. That's a 3 inch slot. Now you want to do a 3 inch slot unless you really made a big mistake. That's a big mistake. Somebody really made a mistake.
Yeah.
That's why they implemented a 3 inch slot because someone really blew it. So if you're going to go down that road, and how about like I want to catch a world record fish? I kind of hope I never do. As a striped bass fisherman, I want to catch a world record fish. But as a hardcore fisherman, I hope I never do, because that's what allows me to get my ass out there and go fishing when the wind's blowing 30 and I'm freezing and I'm like, ugh, I got to be out of my mind and it's raining. But that's why you go. Once you catch it, that dream's done. So half of me wants to, half of me don't.
It's
Yeah.
really interesting. Yeah. I mean, I'm thinking about Greg Myerson, who we had on the show, who got the
Yeah.
world record, and
Yeah.
he doesn't even stripe bass fish anymore. He's
Well, that's what happens.
trout
What the
fishing.
dream's dead, right?
Yeah, yeah,
I
that's
mean,
funny.
you
Yeah,
push yourself to get a big fish. You know what I mean? And I've caught a ton of big fish. And I've had people actually say to me, "Aren't you upset you didn't catch a world record?" I said, "Not at all." But I'll tell you what, I'm one of the few people alive that held a 91-pound fish.
let's hear about that.
I was on when I worked for Frank Dominic. We used to have a lot of the netters come in. And all the pinhookers came in, sold their fish, and we sold them to market. You know what I mean? So if you caught 250 pounds of bass, I'd weigh them up, give you a slip for 250 pounds. Frank would sell them to the market, whatever the price was at the time, and take a percent and give you the rest. And he was always fair, and everyone trusted him. He never screwed around. So one day, one of the gill netters came in, and like I told you, you rarely ever get a big bass in a gill net. That's not meant to catch them, but it, it's called hinged. The hinge of the bass sometimes gets caught in the gill net, and normally when a big bass shakes, they punch a huge hole in the net, and they're gone. This particular fish somehow got wrapped up in the net trying to get away, and the guy got him. So he pulls up to the dock and goes, "Hey, Frank, you want to see the biggest bass you ever seen in your life?" And he takes this fish and flops it on the deck. I was like, "Oh my God." So in those days, we had those metal push carts you put the fish on, like they do in Montauk now. So he put the fish on that, and we brought it up, and Frank goes, "Weigh that thing." And we weighed it. It was 91 pounds. And I remember we put it in the box because we shipped everything to the market. We didn't, in those days, no one took pictures. No one gave a shit. They just wanted the money, you know? So The box says all the boxes had to be approximately 100 pounds. So if it was 5 fish, it would say 5 fish, weight 102 pounds. So they're like 20-pound fish or whatever. This said contents 90 striped bass 91 pounds.
That's crazy. How long was that? Like 6 feet? I mean, what?
We didn't measure them because we didn't give a shit. But I was talking to Marty, the guy who heads the DEC out here, and I had breakfast with him one day and we were talking. He goes, Bill, just so your audience, when they listen that don't know me, people that don't know me, I've spanned 7 decades and I've never stopped fishing. So there's not a lot of people alive like me that have never stopped fishing for 7 decades. Now, I haven't fished 70 years because I'm in my 70s, but I haven't fished 70 years, but I started in the late 60s. So if you go 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2010, 20, that's 7 decades. If I lived to 2030, I would have spanned 8 decades. So, there's a lot there. But he said to me, he goes, in all the years you've been fishing, and I used to work, like I said, I worked for the guy. All the people brought us their fish, everybody, and we shipped them to market. So we had dozens of fish coming. The pinhookers brought them, the netters brought them, everyone brought them, and we sold them. So he said, what's the biggest bass you've ever seen? I said, weight wise or lengthwise? He goes, lengthwise. I said, 54 and a half inches. So he said to me, he goes, it's funny you say that. He goes, because he talks to dozens of fishermen. He goes, over the years, they all told me they caught 60-inch fish. If you caught a 60-inch fish, it would be 90 pounds or better, unless it was anorectically dead, and then it would still be 70.
Wow.
So most of that's BS. So I never saw one. He told me when they did all the testing at Chesapeake, they never saw one. I don't know anyone who's ever officially saw a really big bass, like 60 inches. I had a guy, there was a well-known guy posted one time that he had a 60-inch fish that weighed 50 pounds. I was like, it had to be as thin as a spearing if it was 60 inches. Really, you can't get away from the numbers, you know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
What were some of the biggest sacrifices you've made along the way to be able
Life.
to
Life. If you're obsessed and you're possessed, life doesn't matter. The fish do. I didn't want to, like, when I was a kid, in my head, all I was thinking about was wind, moon, tide, bait, fish, and go. I didn't hang out with the other kids. I never did drugs in my life. I never drank. I never partied. All the stuff everyone else did, I didn't do because I was a night bass fisherman. And to me, you had to have your wits about you. You get enough chances to die at night on the water.
Yeah.
So, we did stuff that I've never seen again, like you don't see today. Like we used to troll eel skins off the jetties in 12 to 15 feet of water at night, no electronics at all. I don't even see any boats out there at night.
Right. Yeah.
You know what I mean? I have never seen a boat off a beach in the ocean at night ever. There are no. We used to anchor in the surf line and chum. There's a lot of techniques that no one does no more.
Why do you think that is? They just haven't been passed
There's
down.
no need. Well, no,
right?
things evolve.
Yeah.
Things evolve. In other words, like when I grew up, bucktails were big. They're still big. But a lot of guys that aren't good with bucktails can go buy swim shads, which work great. So you don't have to be good at it. And they're not, you know what the difference is to me? When I went fishing, I went to catch as many fish as I could catch. And you get very efficient. Like if you fished with me for an hour, you'd realize that right away. It takes me like 3/10 of a second to tie a knot. It don't take me 3 minutes. I don't put the rod down, take my time. I'm in and out in seconds. You know what I mean? Back in the water. I bait a hook so fast you can't believe it. In the water, out. When I commercially fished, I ground every barb off so the fish would fall off the hook when it hits the deck, right back in the water. Everything you do is geared for numbers. So, and everybody knew me because of that. That's what made me become very well known, because all the heavy hitters of the day were catching 200 or 300 or 400 pounds of fish. I catch 6 or 8 or 12. And they were like, who the hell is this kid? Like,
yeah, right.
I actually had a big deal one day with years and years later. I'm in this a bait and tackle shop in East Rockaway. Skippy, my friend, he used to run Hennings in Atlantic Beach when I used to run Frank's in Allen Park. He was a really good fisherman. So Atlantic Beach had in those days had a huge school of school bass on that bridge. You know, like those 5, 6, 7, 8 pound fish. Huge schools of them. So this guy's arguing about clam chumming with a guy, and one of the guys says to me, he goes, "Hey, Bill," he goes, "You used to fish the Atlantic Beach Bridge." I said, "I did." So he goes, "Well, what's the best you ever did?" I said, "I want to tell you." So he goes, "No, really?" I said, "I'm not telling you." I said, "Yeah, you guys just ain't ready for that shit." So this one guy, he goes, "You're full of," he goes, you got on me a little bit. So he goes, "Well, what's a good," he goes, "I've been fishing that bridge for 25 years. My best day was 38 fish." I said, "So what?" So he goes, "Well, what's your best day?" I said, "I would average 90 to 100 fish a tide with my eyes closed."
Oh, wow.
I said, "When the fish are there." Now, they're not always there, obviously. So I went in his boat with my friend and his friend. And I have witnesses to this. That's why I can tell you this, because there's enough people that knew about it. The very first day I had 95 fish, he had 3. The second day I went over 125. He was done.
He was probably
I was
crying.
like, "I don't fish like you. I don't fish like anybody else." Because my version of life, if I fish like the rest of the world, I catch what the rest of the world catches. And 90% of them don't catch shit. So I want to catch fish. Yeah. And I have sympathy for today's world because they don't have the bodies of fish that we had. You know, they're just not here no more. They're not going to do what we did.
So you
It's not
you
going to
you
happen.
you fished through the moratorium, right?
Right through.
Yeah. So what was that like for the whole
It
scene?
had its moments. It was much harder. The bridges saved me. There was always big fish on the bridges, and what I mean by that, there wasn't schools of them, and there wasn't hundreds of them, but there was. You could fish. You could walk the bridges for a week and not see a good fish or a fish, and then go up there and it'd be a big fish. You know, and I used to tell people all the time. I said, "I don't care if you catch 420-pound fish. No one gives a shit." I said, "You catch a 58, everybody remembers it.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that."
Yeah.
You
In
know?
what year would you say you caught the most 50s in?
Well, there was 2 actually. The late 70s, going probably into the very early 80s, and the 90s was unbelievable. I had in the book we're writing now. I don't know if I should really say anything because it's in the book. But I've had numerous times where I've had more than 250s on the same tide.
That's crazy, man.
Yeah,
That's crazy. Fishing
yeah.
for him with the same technique?
Well, there's a lot of techniques. No, everything's different
Oh
in
no,
this
I mean
world.
with those 2 fish on that same tide.
Oh yeah. Well,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
had 4. Listen. I had 450s in a row on 4 consecutive casts in front of 2 dozen people
Wow.
that didn't get a bite.
How'd you pull that off?
I'm good at what I do. And like I told you, I don't fish like the rest of the world, and I don't feel like teaching them. I will help anyone catch fish. I'm not arrogant like that. I'm not cocky like that. If you're standing next to me, I'll help you catch a fish no matter what. You know what I mean? But there's certain things I won't teach anybody ever because I know certain things that I've never heard anyone say in my entire lifetime. And I'm going to leave it like that because, and I'm not trying to be mysterious. It's just that some of it is just so stupid, simple, common sense, and I don't understand. Like I did a seminar just recently, and I had like 5 or 6 people comment to me on it. Like a guy was like, "When you're fishing," he goes, I said, "Are you fishing the beach?" He goes, "Yeah." So he goes, "Well, how do you find fish?" I said, "The first thing you do is walk against the tide." He goes, "What are you talking about?" I said, "Well, let's assume you're on a beach and say a quarter mile away there's a big school of bass to the east, and a quarter mile away to the west there's another school of bass, and you're in the middle. If you walk with the tide, you ain't catching up with either one of them. If you walk against the tide, you're going to run into somebody. Then you can walk with the tide and keep catching them."
So when you say walk with the tide, what do you mean exactly?
Well, bass travel with the tide. They feed against it, but they travel with it. They're not going to travel against the tide. That just uses all their energy up.
Right,
And
right.
you can prove that. Go to any beach on a bite, like Montauk, the Hamptons years ago, and you would see the guys in the pickup trucks running down the beach in their truck, chasing the fish or getting ahead of them, going with the direction of the tide. So if the tide's going east to west, they're going east to west once they find the fish. But if you're not catching nothing and the tide's going east to west, you need to go east to find the fish. If you don't know what you're doing, and I'm assuming like you're not fishing a piece of water that you fish every day where you know this structure, that structure, all that stuff. But if you're new and you know nothing, If you walk with the tide, you could be in between the fish all the time. It's like walking with traffic. If there's no cars, if you're walking with traffic and there's no cars, and there's a bunch of cars in front of a bunch of cars, you might never. If you're walking at the same speed, you might never catch up. But if you walk against traffic, you're going to run into it. It's just good common sense.
Perfect analogy. Yeah.
The best fishermen I ever met in my life, every one of them, without exception, they have one stunning common thing in common. They have absolutely crystal clear common sense. They don't bullshit themselves. They don't get caught in fantasy land. These fish swim and eat, go find where they eat. Job number one of any fisherman is to find the fish. Because if you can't find them, you can't catch them. That's your first job.
What's your second? To actually
Fishing.
catch them?
Yeah. then it's figuring them out.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So what's the difference in figuring out what makes one fisherman better than the other? Well, you can train yourself to be better at what you do if you got a good head on your shoulders. In other words, do you randomly cast, or do you say, I'm casting right here, reel it in at this speed? I'm going to cast my next cast here and do this, and my next cast here and do that. And if, for argument, you did 3 different techniques, if you hit a fish, did you remember what you did, or did you just cast and reel it in? So if you remembered what you did, you're going to remember a few things: where you cast, the speed of your retrieve, the depth your lure is at, or whatever. And you remember that, and you repeat it. And if you repeat it and you catch a fish, that's where the fish are. Keep doing it till it changes, and then start over again. So that's pattern fishing. But I've seen most people, they couldn't tell you where they hooked the fish or what. They're just casting, and then, whoa, I got fish.
And they're not learning really anything from it.
Well, they're not really meant to, because it's not that serious. They're just having a good time.
Right.
And there's nothing wrong with that. If you're the type of fisherman, you just want to go out, hang out with the boys, have a good time, maybe catch fish, maybe not. That's great. Yeah, that's fine. The only beef I have is guys that think they're great and they aren't. I have big trouble with that. You know what I mean?
You see a lot of that, I bet, huh?
Oh yeah. I don't get involved with it. Like, I couldn't care less. I'm not on social media. I never will be, because I couldn't care less about it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? None of that matters to me. I want to go fishing. I don't want to talk and bullshit online. I don't care where you caught your fish yesterday. Doesn't matter to me a bit.
Right.
I know where my fish are. I don't care where yours are.
Do you have any superstitions when you go out there?
No.
Nothing.
No.
Don't believe in the banana thing or anything.
I don't believe in none of that bullshit.
I love it.
Fish just swim and eat. I just got to know what. Got to find what they're eating. That's all.
Yeah.
If they're on the bottom of sleeping, I couldn't care less. I can't catch them sleeping.
Do you ever sleep, dude?
I don't sleep too much. I mean, I'm a little older now, so I can't do what I used to. Like, I would fish all night, go right to work, and go back fishing again the next night. Sometimes I do that 30, 35 hours in a row, and then I'd sleep.
Yeah.
And then I do it again. But if I'm on a bite, then I'm very exact. Like, I'm not a 24-hour fisherman. I'm a tide fisherman. In other words, if I lock onto these fish and say they're fishing the last 3 hours of out, I will go every single day until that bite ends or changes. But I won't go fishing the in. I won't fish the beginning of the out. I lock into that. And when you're fishing 7 days a week, you get a sixth sense. You can feel the way the bite, the fish are moving. Nature is very amazing when you pay attention to it. Like, everything turns on at the same time. And what I mean by that is that if you're in one beach 10 miles away, say you're fishing the outgoing, all those beaches were produced at the same time. The bite turns on for a distance at the same time. It's not like you're fishing this beach at in and a mile away, they're catching them on out. That doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you ever had any close calls with death out there?
Plenty.
Let's hear some of those.
Your version of life is that if you fish enough, you're going to get chances of dying.
Right.
Yeah, I had one time I had anchored my boat in the Rockaways, and I used to anchor in the surf line and clam chum the actual surf line. We were so close to the beach, you could cast onto the beach sometimes.
Yeah.
And you had to pay attention, because the tide go out, the waves would get tighter to you. Well, this one day, we were killing the fish, and the boat violently lifted up on the front. And I used to double anchor, 2 anchors, so you want to flip out there. And the boat violently went up in the front, and I turned around, and there was a 8-foot wave of water over the top of it. I was like, holy shit. And I turned the key, and thank God the motor started. I slammed the boat at the forward, even though it was double anchored, so the anchor lines were slack. But when the boat went forward, the wave hit hard and it blew the windshield off the boat, knocked us down, leveled the boat with water, lost a few fishing rods, a lot of fish. And thank God that motor stayed running for whatever reason. And we were bailing our ass off, and we waddled back in. I remember saying, I was like, I'm never doing that again. That was just stupid. Because you get brave sometimes when you're young. You don't think you can die.
Yeah, right.
You know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Any,
And then
yeah, let me hear the other one. Yeah.
one time I fell asleep on the bridge. Yeah, I'd been fishing the bridge like 5 or 6 nights in a row. I was so tired I couldn't see straight, but didn't matter. You know? So I remember in the old days there was a little ledge over the rail that overhung the water. So I jumped over the rail. I'm a painter, so I'm not scared of heights, scaffolds. I do all that shit. So I jump over the rail. I sit on that little 18-inch ledge. My feet are dangling over the open water. I put my left arm around the rail, my rod through it, and I remember saying to myself, I just need to close my eyes for a second. And I closed my eyes. Well, I opened them up, and the sun was up. I thought I was in my bedroom sleeping. I was so, how you're so like disillusioned, you don't know where you are for a
Yeah.
minute.
Yeah.
I was like, and I looked down, I was like, "Ah!" The water was there. Like my heart went right through my throat. I was like, holy
Holy
shit.
shit.
But meanwhile, my rod stayed, I stayed, and that was another one of them stupid moves. I was like, okay, I won't do that again.
That's
You know?
crazy. So I
Yeah.
got one close call from the boat, one from the bridge. How about from the surf?
I never had one from the surf, but I had one from a back marsh. I was on a back marsh at dead low tide, by the way, I never wear waders. I won't wear waders. So this is the first. I had waders on then. I was young. I sunk up to my waist in mud, and I couldn't get out.
Holy
And it was dead low
shit.
tide. I was right on the shore, and I never forgot. I couldn't even wiggle. And at first, I didn't panic. I was okay. And then about a half hour, and I can't get at this. And I'm starting to say this tide's going to come in. And I never forgot. I was like, my poor mother's going to go find me dead, like floating in the water
Oh
like
my
this. I
God.
was like, yeah. So then a little bit of panic starts to set in. You're like, I got to get out of this. And I had a little razor on me. I always just carry a little, like one of those folding razor knives. And I started cutting my way just a little at a time, digging out the mud cut. It took me like 2 hours to get out. And I got out.
Oh
And I
my
never wore a
God.
pair of waders again. That was the last pair I ever wore.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Oh my God. That is a
That
close
that was
call if I
actually
ever heard
that
one.
was scary. Yeah, that was scary.
Oh, that
You
sounds
know.
scary. I mean, that
And
would
and
be
I
one
was in the
terrible
back of
way
the
to go
marsh.
out.
Yeah, nobody might have ever found me because I had walked way back into the marshes where
Oh my
no one ever
God.
goes. I would have just been one of them guys like he didn't come home and no one knew what the hell
Yeah,
happened.
MIA.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh my God.
yeah, that was pretty funny.
That's wild. Never put on a pair of waders again.
No, I won't wear waders. No, I feel like Jaws movie. I'll never wear life preserver.
Yeah, exactly what I was thinking. Oh
That
man.
was good.
So you mentioned like, you never really paid attention to what other people were doing, but I know you fished a lot of tournaments. Did you ever have anybody that you considered like a rival?
Yeah, well, this is how I look at tournaments. When I look at a major tournament, because I won a lot of them, when I look at major tournament, this is how I look at it. 80% of the guys can't win. They only think they can. 20% are capable of winning, and 5% are capable of beating you. And not that they're better, but they're good enough to constantly catch enough good fish to win. Because if you look at most of your big tournaments over the years, there's always similar guys on top of them. And those are the guys that get it. Now, me, I used to pray for the worst weather in the world. The worst, the better. Because the really bad weather does a few things. One is even good fishermen, some of them are very uncomfortable fishing bad weather, like very uncomfortable. So they don't perform well, you know. Then there's others who just, when you get bad weather, their scenario changes by the way they fish. You know what I mean? So, like if you're a drift fisherman, say you're drifting bunker and the wind's against the tide and it's really blowing and raining, very hard to fish that correctly. So that next takes them out of the scenario. So there's a percent that can fish in any weather in any situation, and those are the guys that are consistently in the top. You know, and it's a mindset. Like it's to me, it's predator versus prey. There is no prey that beats the predator to me. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? So I'm a predator. I'm hunting these fish.
Yeah.
There is no bass that gets the best of me. I have no fish stories. I make fun of everybody. I do it all the time, and not nastily. I'm like, I have no fish stories. They're like, why? I said, I hook them, I land them. None of that bullshit. I lost them in the wash. I pulled the hook. I broke the line. That doesn't happen. You know, it just doesn't happen because I don't ever fish casually.
Yeah.
Like every time I catch a big fish, I cut my line back and retie. Every single time. I sharpen my hooks all the time. I change my line. By the way, I don't fish braid. I change my line religiously. You know, I fish 50-pound mono. And
Wow.
I buy a 3-pound spool every year. I change it religiously. You know.
That's
So
wild. Why
so
don't
when
you
I
like
hook a
using
fish,
braid?
well, I'm in the real world of fishing.
Yeah.
Why do you use braid? In other words, I do a lot of seminars. I ask that question every single time. So to me, if you tell me you use braid because A, your buddy does, or because it's a popular thing to do for something, then you don't know shit. You should tell me I use braid because it cuts the line better at this situation. If I'm fishing 80 feet of water, I don't need an 8-ounce sinker. I need a 3. If you're bucktail and fluke in 15 feet of water, you can use a much smaller bucktail and get the same action. So fluke, the more vertical the line stays, the more fish you catch. Everything in fishing is the strike zone when it comes to artificials, right? So the longer you stay in the strike zone, the more fish you catch. So if you're using braid fluke fishing in the bay, say, and you're in 15, 10, 12, 14 feet of water, you can use say 20-pound braid. It's like fishing 6-pound test line. So instead of using a 1-ounce bucktail, you can use a half-ounce bucktail. So you can stay in the strike zone longer where the line don't sweep away from the boat and angle. The longer you do that, the more fish you catch. And then it reverses. Like I fish a bridge with heavy mono. I defy anyone alive to outfish me with braid. I don't care who they are, how good they think they are. I don't give a shit who they are. Because with braid, the bucktail cuts the water way too fast, sinks quickly. I can float my bucktail. You can't do that with braid. So I can keep my lure in the strike zone. Say the strike zone is 4 feet. If the braid covers 2 and I cover 4, I have twice as much chance of catching a fish than you do.
Yeah.
Who's
Yeah.
going to catch more at the end of the night? I am. So you can't, if you tell me you fish braid just because it's braid, then you're just telling me you're ignorant. That's all you just told me. That means you don't know nothing.
Right.
So if you tell me I fish braid, and I've had guys, they're like, Bill, I fish braid because this, and this. Now there's other scenarios. The new guys I talk to, they're all advanced, all ODM, fish braid, all that stuff. They tell me they lose a lot of fish. They don't hook them. Now, I couldn't tell you because I don't fish braid anymore. Because the way I fish, I don't do that. But could it be that you're setting the hook so fast because you feel it instantly that you lip hook them instead of that half a second delay where it'd be deeper in his mouth? Maybe. You know, why would you fish braid on an open beach with bait? No advantage. You lose 90% of your fish in front of you. So braid doesn't give. Why would you want a 50-pound fish in the wash with braid with line that doesn't give? That's the case. You should back your drag off a bit right away.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. This is.
So I don't ever fish. Like once you get to know me, I don't fish casually. I don't fish for granted, and I don't do nothing without knowing 100% why I do it.
Did you ever have anybody that you had as like a partner in crime, like somebody you fished with all the time, or was it mainly just you going out there alone?
Well, I like to fish by myself or with one person. I don't fish with multiple people. It's not serious to me. I'm out there to catch fish. I'm no other reason. I don't want to have a nice time, good day. I don't go in there bullshit. I want to kill these fish.
I
Yeah.
love it.
Yeah.
So how many tournaments would you say you've entered over the years?
I've entered so many you can't believe it.
And how
I had
many?
one tournament I won every year with a fish over 50 pounds before they kicked me out.
Really?
But you know what? Yeah, they did. But well, it had like 340 guys in it, and then by the 5th year, it had like 60.
Yeah, because you just kept winning.
Yeah. But you know what? I've had it with tournaments because I take too much heat. I have been accused of everything you can think of. I had guys tell me I bought my fish in the Fulton Fish Market. I'd be like, if they had 50-pound fish in the Fulton Fish Market, I'd buy one. Except the law says they can't have them. They can only have 38-inch fish.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then I've had guys, everything you can think of. I had a guy say one time he actually saw me. He goes, he found a dead fish on the beach and it was big and he won. I was like, really?
Yeah, of
Yeah,
course. Yeah,
because
sure, sure.
the jealousy is enormous. You know,
It's wild, right? The jealousy
yeah.
in the fishing community is something that will never cease to
Ah,
amaze me.
well, there's a big ego. It was striped bass.
Where do you
Not, with other fish, it doesn't exist as much, but with
right?
striped bass, it does
Why do you think that is?
because it's the biggest game fish in the surf line, and everyone's like, it like sparks everybody's interest that's fishing. They're all excited. They're like,
Yeah.
I mean, I have, if I told you how many guys send me pictures of 30-pound fish, they think of 50, I'd be rich.
There's a lot of that online. A lot of
Yeah,
that.
but I don't argue the point. If you want to think your fish is that big, knock yourself out.
So have you caught
Like if I met you and showed you some of the pictures of the 50 60s I have, and you compare these guys' 50s, their fish look like minnows.
yeah. So have you caught a lot of heat over the years for killing fish?
Well, I haven't killed a big fish since 2000, literally, and I don't. I'm very good conservation wise, and not because of conservation wise. Just so you know. In other words, what I mean by that is I'm not a tree hugger. You know what I mean? But I love these fish, and I want them to live. So, like when I'm fishing my boat, I unhook them right in the water. I don't even take them out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I love fishing barbless hooks more than I had a discussion with one of the DC guys about circle hooks. I think you'd be better off with barbless hooks than circle hooks. And I know an extensive amount about circle hooks because I fish real long line circle hooks, not those bullshit J hooks with a hangnail. That's not a real circle. That's a bullshit circle.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So, long line hooks are meant you could leave your fish there for a week and reel them in, it'll still be there.
Yeah.
But the problem with circle hooks that I have versus barbless hooks, like I'm surprised like a company like Mustad or Gamaga or any of them, I'm surprised none of them make barbless hooks because I understand the danger if a fish swallows a hook. That's one thing. And that's more on the fisherman because you let them run too far. But okay, be as it may with that. If you the circle hooks definitely hook in the corner of the mouth, which is a good thing. But so many of these guys don't know how to remove a hook. They just wiggle and yank and tear that fish's mouth up. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? If you had a barbless hook, it would be like sticking a needle in, taking it out, and make a little tiny pinhole, and you're done.
Yeah.
And for the handful of fish that were gut hook, which I don't think is all that many. You know what I mean? So for those fish, even if they died, they died. But I think the numbers would be way less, and the survival rate would be way more because they made a big deal about fishing live bait with a circle, but they didn't make a big deal about fishing 3 treble hooks on a plug, which does the most damage of anything.
Yeah.
I mean, you ever catch a bluefish with all 3 treble hooks and he can't even open his mouth to get the hook out?
Yeah. No, you're screwed. Yeah.
Yeah, so why don't you sell a double hook instead of a triple? There's so many options that nobody takes, and that's where we talk with that stupid common sense that these guys are all missing. It's like, you need to. What they're doing is they're bending to the masses of stupidity. In other words, they're assuming that everybody's stupid, so we'll have to go what covers the blanket better than the rest.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. I mean, I see where they're coming from, but I definitely see where you're coming from too. I mean, it would just
yeah,
make more sense. It would definitely make more sense. So what do you think about the current state of the striped bass? Do you think they're in a good spot
I
right
think they're
now,
for the
or
bass in big trouble
why?
because the last 6 years in a row in the Chesapeake they had a bad spawn, and the last 4 in the Hudson. And you can see it. It's playing out this year. We no longer have, I'll give you an example. For most of my life before recently, we had striped bass everywhere. In other words, Jamaica Bay had striped bass, Atlantic Beach, Rockaways, Fire Island, Jones Beach, Shinnecock, Mauritius, Montauk, Rhode Island, Block, Cape Cod, all at the same time. The bays were full of fish. The oceans had fish. And obviously, each year they eddy it in out where and when, how many. But now, when we have a big body of bass go by, there's nothing behind them and nothing in front of them. So when that body of fish goes from Atlantic Beach to Jones Beach to Fire Island, Atlantic Beach has no fish. So, and now we have social media telling everyone, like last year, I don't know if you knew about it or not, okay, but Atlantic Beach had a huge body of fish stop and stay there for a few weeks. The whole world found out about it. There was hundreds of boats out there. Like, how many times do you think you can pound that school? So if that's
Right.
and people don't realize that school travels up and down the East Coast. So if you hit them at Montauk and you hit them at Fire Island, you hit them at Atlantic Beach, you hit them in Jersey, then South Jersey, and then going down, how many times can you hit that school with that kind of pressure? And not only that, the guys at our social media tells you where they are, how to catch them, what to use. We have electronics that find the fish. There's so much out there. The fish are not capable to survive the technology of today. They're not going to win the battle.
Yeah, they
And if
can't hide
man
anywhere.
doesn't do something about it, they're not going to be here.
Oh man. So what's the answer? Another moratorium, you think?
It's got to be more than a moratorium. In other words, a moratorium is only a band aid. So, say you have a moratorium and the fish come back. As soon as that happens, every user group's going to want to kill them. And I'll give you an example of that. I went to one of the big striped bass meetings with everybody there, all involved. I listened to it for 3 hours. You know what I didn't hear? The only thing I didn't hear was about the fish. Each guy was like, I want to catch, I got to do this, I need to do. How about the fish? Like, aren't we here to save the fish? Because if you save the fish, all of us can catch fish. Like, I wanted to have a trophy tag like they do in Florida with the tarpon or
Yeah.
with the bass. You know what I mean? Like, the handful of us that want to catch a world record or say you want to catch a 50 and you never caught one. Well, I'm going to give you a tag that's good for whenever you use it, not every year or whatever. It's for life until you use it. So say for arguments, what's an arbitrary figure? It's $100 for the tag. So you catch a 48-pound fish. Do you want to use the tag for that? Or you want to wait till you get a 50? Well, if you use the tag for the 48, you got to weigh the fish in, give up the tag, and you can buy another one for like 3 times the price. How many fish you want to kill?
Right. Yeah. Not a
So
bad
that puts
idea
a
at
good
all.
handle. That puts a good handle on a hand. First of all, if you count the 50s caught every year, it's not that many. You know what I mean? So, like me, I have no reason to kill a 50. I've caught so many of them. I want to kill a fish unless it was. I don't even know if I'd kill a world record. It doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, I passed that point. But you say to yourself, for the guys that do, and there's tons of guys that really legitimately want to catch a big fish and keep it. So that's okay. You're not killing a million of them. You're killing one. Then what do you do down the line? Like when you go down south, their limits get lower and lower and lower. So we let 28-inch fish go here. They catch 14-inch fish there. It's like, what do you do with these fish? Well, they're migratory fish. They got to have some type of rule that encompasses. For that to work, it can't be size. It has to be quota. Like if there's 1 million pounds of bass, say in the ocean, arbitrary figure, just for example, say you can only catch 20% of the total. So you can catch 200,000 pounds and then you shut it down. You'll always have 80% left. So there'll always be a healthy stock. We're going 90%, leaving 10. That doesn't work.
That doesn't add up, man. Doesn't add up. So, do you even still go to those meetings anymore where the people
Yeah,
that
I
are
still
in
go off
power
and
like
on,
pretend to
but
listen to everybody?
yeah, well, it's frustrating to listen to because what I'm
Yeah.
really getting is your political point of view for you. You know, when somebody says, I got to feed my family. Well, how much of that striped bass is feeding it? Yeah. The classic example is the party boat crew, and they'll probably get mad at me for this. And I used to be a mate on a party boat, but I grew up for 35, 40 years, not a party boat on Long Island fish for bass, not one, not one. So only the 6-pack charters did. So when they came out, how many fish did they kill? And is it necessary? Well, let's see. There's no more flounder. There's hardly any mackerel. It's like, what are you fishing for? They don't bluefish no more. Years ago in the 80s and stuff, every boat was a bluefish boat.
Yeah.
So now what you're telling me, though, in reality, is you don't really give a shit what you fish for as long as you have something to kill to make your profit. I understand that. You got to make money. But on the other hand, you can't make money at the expense of killing the species and then not have it. So when there's no more striped bass, what are you doing next?
Exactly. How are you going to make money then?
Yeah.
Well, who do you think's doing more damage to the population, the rec guys or the commercial guys?
Wreck guys.
Wow.
I'll rephrase that. The commercial guys are hardly doing any damage because they're only allowed a minimum of like 250 or 60 fish a year. So
Okay.
that's nothing. And they really curtailed them. So they'd want the fish to come back so they can make real money. Because if you gill net, 250, 60 fish, what the hell are you talking about? 10, 15,000, that's shit.
Yeah.
You know?
Right. Right.
So, yeah. And then if you have to cull them, in other words, it's 24 to 38 inches. Well, if you have a bunch of 24 or 25-inch fish, they don't weigh as much as a bunch of 35 to 38-inch fish. So, you're going to try to target the larger ones to make enough money.
Yeah.
The for hire guys, like the party boat crew, they're going out twice a day. They're loading them boats to the gills. Like I listened to one of them say, I've never seen so many bass in my life. That's true, but it was only for 3.5 to 4 weeks.
Yeah.
Like, how many bass? Let's see your records. How many bass did your party boat catch in August and September?
Right. Yeah.
None.
Probably none. Yeah.
So what are you talking about? So what you're doing is you're cherry picking a moment when a million fish gathered outside your inlet, and you went out twice a day catching 400 a day, a tide. How much damage did you do?
Yeah. Exactly. So you think the party
And then,
boats are doing the worst?
yeah,
Yeah.
no doubt about it.
Yeah.
And the recreational fishermen aren't that much better. Let me tell you something. And I don't mean because there's a lot of guys that know and care, so I won't jump on them about it. But I've watched so many recreational guys throw the fish on the surf and land flat right on the sand, no wave, or put their foot on it and dig the hook out for 3 minutes,
Yeah.
or hold it for 5 minutes, taking a picture. You released it, it died 10 minutes later, but you didn't know that because you released it and it swam away. You feel good. You self justified yourself.
Yeah.
So
Right. Right.
yeah, I see that every day of my life. So then they're not squeaky clean either. You know what I mean? But how about changing the law? Yeah, the law says one fish per day per person, right? Who the hell needs one fish per day?
Right.
Nobody.
Unbelievable.
How about two fish a week?
Or one a month.
Whatever. I'm
Yeah.
saying.
Something
Who
better
the
than
hell
what we
needs
got.
one fish per day every day? Nobody.
Hey, everybody, listen up. We're launching something big for all of our Brooklyn Fishing Club members. It's the BFC Members Only Zoom series, and we're bringing back some of our most legendary guests from the podcast. Crazy Alberto Nee, Paul Dixon, Bouncer Smith, just to name a few. These are live, exclusive Zoom calls where you can ask questions, hear stories that didn't make the show, and connect with these legends in a private, members-only setting. Want in? Go to brooklynfishingclub.com and join the club today. You can also check out the full lineup of upcoming Zooms on our events page. It's free for members, but spots are limited. Don't miss it.
But with me and you, we're never going to cure that crap.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. What do you think it's going to take them to put another moratorium on, and then
They're gonna.
people
I
will
almost.
realize
I almost
we're in
would bet
trouble?
money. Yeah, I almost bet money because they're not ready to reevaluate this to 2026. I'll bet money before that they shut it down.
Wow. And how long did the moratorium last in the 80s again?
Well, it just goes a few years, but they opened it up. If they opened it up on 1 year of the young reading in one river, which was very high, and the rest were very low, and they really pushed hard and pushed hard, and they opened it up.
Yeah.
So the politics are big, you know.
Have you ever seen any positive changes come out of going to those meetings, or is it kind of like shoveling shit against the tide?
Pretty much shoveling shit against the tide.
Yeah. I went to a few, and that's what it seemed like. Everybody shares their opinion or their point of view, and then nothing changes anyway. So it's like
Well, you know what?
it gets
What happened?
discouraging.
What you said is true, with the exception of what changes is the money. In other words, when the pressure is put on them, they have to bend to the pressure. It's your job. So if I'm your boss and I'm like, hey, you know what? I realize the bass are in trouble, but my people need to eat these fish, so you better vote the right way. And you do. I don't think we're going to cure the problem. I think they're going to shut it down eventually. But there's cures, and there's cures that'll work so everyone can fish. But but we don't seem to be getting to that point because no one's willing to sacrifice. They want the other guy to sacrifice.
Right. Everybody's pointing fingers at the other person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I'll be honest with you. I talked to a couple of commercial guys. I like their attitude. They realize that there is no money in this with a handful of fish. So they're more than happy to save these fish. And obviously it's for self, interest, but that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But, if you can save the fish and bring them back, they can make more money. And everyone can if you do it. There is no reason to do what they're doing. There's not a party boat out there that if you caught, if you didn't catch a fish, the mate will catch one. You can go home with a fish. And I guess that's okay. Like I can't knock them for that. Everyone wants to do that, but they're going to be a dying business anyways because the law in New York is like we're slowly getting to one fish per person. Period. You know,
Yeah.
it's like every day it gets worse. It's like one striped bass, one weak fish, two flounder. Pretty soon the porgies will be 10.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, they're gonna keep knocking it down until yeah, it's just nothing. It's not worth it. It won't be viable to make a living anymore doing it.
So,
But we're getting off track with the striped bass now. We're talking politics.
it's all right. It's all right.
I think you should rig an eel and go catch a big bass.
What are your some of your favorite ways to fish for them? I know you're constantly changing it up and adapting, but if you had a few ways to fish like for the rest
I
of your
definitely
life,
have a few favorites by
yeah,
far.
yeah, let's hear 'em.
Bucktailing is by far my favorite. In fact, I'm going to write a book. They want me to write a book on bucktailing because I've learned stuff in bucktailing that'll change everybody's perspective. You know what I mean? So, like head design is tremendous. Different heads fish differently. 90-degree eye versus 60-degree eye, tremendous difference. When do you use it? When don't you? And why? That's stuff that I have stunning knowledge in. I mean, stunning knowledge in. You know, so I think before I die, if I can do that, that would be nice. And bucktailing is a big deal because
Yeah,
if you're a really good bucktailer, you'll never get outfished by accident. That can't happen.
yeah,
But on the other hand, you could fish a different lure and get lucky, but you can't do that with a bucktail ever. The master of bucktail will always outfish the rest of them.
so what are some of the tricks with bucktailing?
Well, you got to understand what a bucktail does. So, bucktailing, first of all, bucktailing at night is always better than bucktailing in the daytime. Second, bucktailing off the surf is not real bucktailing. You're fishing a lure. So, and what I mean by that is that a bucktail is a lead head that sinks. So the surf goes from deep to shallow. That's the wrong scenario for real bucktailing. So when you bucktail off the surf, you're using it more as a lure. And it just shows how versatile the bucktail is that you can use it anywhere, any way, and catch a fish. So, and I'm not knocking the guys that use bucktails on the surf because you can kill them on the surf with bucktails and everyone knows it. You know what I mean? But not in the art form. In other words, you're using a bucktail more as a lure, a regular lure. If you're fishing us, what is better in a it excels in a strong tide. There's very few lures that you can fish in a strong tide to fish correctly. And then a bucktail does something no other lure does. It with a 90-degree eye, when it reaches its zenith, it does a U-turn completely. It wiggles for a second and then rises up in the tide. If you can put that in front of a fish at that moment, you'll probably catch them. So a bucktail is fished in your mind. So now you're fishing 30 feet of water. The tide's moving at 3 knots to your right. You have to cast a little far to your left to reach the bottom. When the line straightens out, the bucktail turns. If it turns in front of structure with a fish on, you catch one fish after another.
Wow.
And that's in your head. Do that at night, even better.
Yeah.
The guy standing next to you has no idea what you're doing. He's just seeing you cast. So, yeah, like years ago, John DeMayer wrote my favorite book, on bucktailing, which you can't get no more. And when it first came out, my buddy Jeff, that fished with me for years, he's like, I can't believe John wrote a book. He's giving it all away. I was like, and that book was never popular then. It's more popular now. And I said, he's not giving nothing away. I said, John is such a high level bucktail. I said, most people won't even know what the hell he's writing about. and they didn't. They actually didn't.
They didn't
You know
get
what I
it.
mean? No, they didn't get it. That's why the book's more popular now because it had enough years where better fishermen than Bucktail started explaining what John did. Yeah.
That's really
But
interesting.
bucktail is my favorite because it's a true art form. Like I bucktail on the bridges. There's times I'm on the bridges. There could be 50 guys up there. I have to fish the whole bridge all by myself, and I do it religiously. So
Yeah.
it's just the art form that you can't do. But my second, I would fish popping plugs without hooks. That's how much fun they are. Just to watch them smash it, knock it out of the water. I think that's pretty cool. You
That's
know what I
so
mean?
cool. Wait,
Yeah,
before
I
we
think
get to
that's
the
great.
plugs though, do you have obviously it all depends on like uh you know all the other factors, but do you have like a favorite color bucktail for a certain situation?
Well, let me explain bucktailing first. The bucktail really doesn't catch shit. It's the pork rinder trailer on the back that does. So that's very important. You know what I mean? Like there's guys I know that don't fish it and they catch fish once in a while. But the reality is, you could fish a lead head with no hair and a piece of pork rind, you catch fish. But if you want to get into color, uh, if you're fishing with small bait, you need a red pork rind or a trailer or something red. Red disappears quickly in the water column and at night even quicker. So you can fish a little bigger lure because there's times for arguments, if the tide's strong, you can't fish a light bucktail. You can't get down. Fish it deep. So you need a bigger lure, but you need it to look smaller. So red disappears in the water column. So if you put red on, it makes the profile smaller. If there's big bait, white on white works great. If the water's murky, yeah. So where'd you lose me at?
If the water's murky.
If the water's murky, chartreuse works great because it's the most visible color in murky water. And shell yellows work really good on bright moons.
The yellows work good on bright moons, you said?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And so you're matching the color of the rind to the bucktail, right? So you just
yeah.
make it
Well,
look
what
like
I'm doing is I'm making the lure bigger, smaller, more presentable. The
uh-huh.
the world of bucktailing is 100% presentation.
Yeah.
It's got to look right. It's got to match what you're doing. You know what I mean?
So when you're
So
fishing one from the surf, like what's the best way to retrieve it? Like I know you're kind of just bouncing it along the bottom, but like is there a different way to retrieve it on a certain tide or how does that all
yeah,
work?
almost as a rule, if you want bigger fish, the slower the better. So if you're reeling in and your lure is slamming into the bottom, it's too heavy. You know, and that's why you need a lot of bucktails with like I even take bucktails because they come in like ounce and a half too. I'll drill out where the eyes are lightly with a drill, literally, because I don't care what my bucktails look like. They don't have to be jewelry and shiny, and they can just be a bucktail. If they got some hair in a trailer, they're going to catch fish. So I'll weigh the lure and say it's an ounce and a half. And an ounce is too light. I'll just lightly drill where the eyes are, and I'll get it to an ounce and a quarter, an ounce and a 16th. And you'd be amazed that little bit can make all the difference in the world. And the real difference is it's not like I'm going to catch 100 fish and you're going to catch nothing. If you're using the wrong size, you can catch nothing. But say you're just using a little bit off. So the presentation is not quite as good as the fish want. That means you caught 3 fish, I caught 8 fish. You know what I mean? That's kind of how that works. It's not like you won't catch nothing. You should catch. But the guy with the proper size and the proper swing and the presentation that the fish likes, not that you like, that the fish likes. And once you lock into that, and when you do it enough, you start to realize that little bit. Like, there's tides that have push off and on through the whole tide. Like you'll see it push hard, then it'll back off. Or a lot of times you have a really, really hard push, and it's hard to catch fish. And as that tide edges off, you start to catch fish because it was moving just a little too hard for what they wanted that particular night. And all that makes a difference in how well you catch.
Do you ever use the bucktails that have I'm forgetting like the technical term for it, but like the hook moves.
That's a swing hook.
A swing hook. Yeah. Do you ever
Yeah,
use
they
those?
used to use them. They used to use them when they wire line, you know, jigging them. I don't do that, but there's a difference because I fish 50-pound mono. I only use 8/0 hooks, nothing little. If I use a 6 or a 7 on a big fish, it'll straighten out.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. No small. I make my own bucktails, and every one of them has an 8/0 hook in them.
That's crazy. You make them all yourself?
Yeah, my friend Johnny makes them with me sometimes, but we drill out the molds to accept the big hooks. I mean, we do a lot to get where we want to go. I know what I want, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, you want to, and head design is tremendous because there's so many. You know, you have you have like the spro head, you have the ball head, you have arrowheads, you have bullet heads, you have smiling bills, you have upperman bucktail, which by the way was the first bucktail. The split head, half red, half white, looks like a bean, a lima bean. You know, and then you have the pot belly ones. Yeah, there are the bullheads. There are so many head designs, but they were made for a definite purpose. It's not random jetty casters. So, like if you want to cut through the water quickly, you need an arrow or a bullet head. It cuts quickly. It sinks fast. You know what I mean? It cuts the water very smart. If you if you fish like a smiling bill, they they, they cast a little shittier than the other stuff, but they wobble a little more in the water because they got a lip to push the water back and forth. You can a smiling bill with a lot of hair, you can keep off the bottom a little easier. You know what I mean? So when you adjust like that, that's very high level stuff and probably not for most of your audience. But for that 5% that want to become much better, it's the detail that puts you there. It's as simple as that. It's that fine detail. And a guy who's, I told my daughter, she said to me one time, because I'm a high level painter too. So she said, Dad, how do you know if someone's really good when you hire them? I said, it's really pretty simple. I said, when you work and you're really good at what you do, you look effortless doing it. You don't strain, you don't struggle, and you never bitch and moan.
Mm,
I said, that's the mark of a polished professional, period.
yeah. No bitching and no moaning. Just
I
get it
never
done.
bitch and moan. I never complain. Just get it done. I don't care what I got to do.
What do you, so obviously you've caught a million fish, but there have to be some times where you get skunked, right? When you get skunked, are you taking everything you can from that and learning from it, or how do you respond to getting skunked?
My version of getting skunked is you didn't learn shit because there was nothing there to catch.
that was a stupid question. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Like I'm a little different type of fisherman. In other words, I'm not 90% or 95% confident in what I'm doing. I am 100% confident in what I do. So my technique works. It's always worked. It's never not worked. So, and what I mean by that is I've never been in a situation where the other guy's killing them and I'm not catching fish. I've never had that happen.
It's
So,
amazing.
I mean, maybe when I was 12, but in my conscious adult life,
Yeah.
never. So when I do what I do, I'm 100% sure I'm going to catch. And if I don't catch, there are no fish there.
Right.
So I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
I was up on a bridge a while back before the bass were here, and there was like 4 or 5 guys fishing. Everyone was throwing bucktails or shad bodies. No one got a bite or a hit. I caught 2 fish, and I scraped them off the bottom, literally. But I wasn't leaving the bridge until I caught a fish because I've never fished a bridge without catching a fish.
Yeah. You
So
would have
I
stayed
was
there
like,
forever.
I will stay here until I'm dead, you know. So, but I'm catching a fish, and then you use every trick you've ever known because you're possessed. It's like there is not a chance I'm not catching something. Just
Yeah.
not going to happen. And then I work my ass off to catch them. But if I really ever, and there's no one alive who hasn't gotten skunked. The best fisherman on the planet, every once in a while, you get skunked. But I've had runs where, like, and I mean literally 8, 10, 12 years in a row, not once without catching them. Not once. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
How would you say that this obsession has impacted your family life?
You got to be careful. Like, I did a lot of work. It can really like ruin your life. But like when my kids were young, I fished 4 in the morning to 7, came home, made sure they went to school, this and that, and then go out late night. But you got to be real careful because you can really, if you get so obsessed, that you can ruin your life. You can lose your family, get divorced, you can lose your business.
Yeah.
I mean, it can get to the point where like you're out of your mind nuts. You know what I mean?
Have you seen that
So
happen to a lot of people?
quite a bit. Yeah. And the most amazing thing to me with fishermen is what they buy. And like they're worse than women with shoes for weddings. I have good fishermen. I mean, good fishermen go to these shows and they buy stuff I know they're never going to use.
Yeah.
And they pay a lot of money. It's like, oh, look at that plug. That's really pretty. And it's $40, $50. And they
Yeah.
buy it. And I'm like, what'd you buy that for? Like I was at a show just last year, right? And this guy recognized me. He's, oh my God, Billy Greek. He goes, how you doing? He gives me one of his T-shirts, and he's like, you can have any plug you want. So I'm taking too long, And he goes, what's the matter? I was like, you don't have any color I'd use here. He goes, what do you mean? I said, don't take me wrong. I said, nothing against you. I said, your work is impeccable. It's beautiful. Your paint jobs are stunning. I'm looking at the way he put them together, like, the metal lips are perfectly perpendicular to the face. The wiring is perfect. I'm like, they're very well made because a lot of them aren't, but this one was. But you have these wild, ridiculous colors. And I'm like, I don't fish that, you know?
He was probably heartbroken.
Yeah. So he goes, well, I said, make me a white one. I'll take that.
Nice and simple.
Yeah. Well, I like simple, stupid. It works the best.
So do you like doing those shows? Is that something you enjoy?
I don't do them. I just visit.
You visit. Okay, gotcha.
I just visit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I go look at all the stuff.
Yeah.
And I always look for stuff that, like I went there one day and I always liked redfins, and especially on the surf, this one spot in Atlantic Beach, I used to fish the little 5-inch red and white head fish, it caught fish. You don't see them too much anymore, but you got to show you get them for nothing. You know what I mean? A couple of bucks, you buy them. But stuff like that, or when they started to load them, nobody realized that when they loaded them, it slowed down the rock and the wobble a little bit and caught bigger fish. You know? But yeah, I don't like, to me, there's a reason for everything. I don't just take for granted, like he fished that and caught a fish. I want to know why he caught a fish on that.
Yeah.
What was his retrieve? What was it? Like the new guys with all they're trying to cast as far as they can. And I say the same thing all the time. Like, forget big fish. How many fish have you caught on a full? 10%,
Yeah.
5%,
Yeah.
90% are within the first 50 yards of the beach. So yeah.
So what is some advice that you would give to not just the average up and coming angler, but like somebody who's really hardcore and they're getting out there every night?
When you're really hardcore, that means you've done a few things. One is your equipment is really good and you take care of it and you retie your knots all the time. So that's very big. Your hooks are sharp. So we're going to assume you know all that. But really even hardcore fishermen, as a rule, get trapped in fishing one way. In other words, and it's easy to do, and all of us, including me, I work at not becoming casual. That's very big on my agenda because it's very easy to become casual. You did this, you caught fish, I'm going to do it again, again, again. There's times you need to get out of that because it becomes like a rut. You know what I mean? And and the reason I say that, if you ever watch, the freshwater bass tournaments, it's very rare that the guy who fishes on his own lake ever wins. And there's a reason for that. So say you fish on the guy's lake, you've never been there in your life. Well, he knows that this building, that spot, that has fish because he's fished on it. Well, today they're not on it. What do? He has no clue because that's what he's done for 25 years. You, on the other hand, don't have a clue what the hell you're doing. You're going to try different stuff, look for different pieces. You're hunting. He's done. And that's that casualness I'm talking about. And it's very easy to get caught up and do like this is like I've had guys tell me, oh, I only do this. I said, so you only catch fish when they respond to that, right? Like you didn't think about that?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So do you think at this stage in your life that there's any room for improvement?
You improve till you're dead.
Gotcha.
There's not a day you go fishing you don't learn something. And I mean not a day. Because you might not know you learned something or you might not be conscious, but there's always little tells that you might not tell. Like I'm very observant, and I've trained myself to be. I used to take my grandson down the parkway with the new ospreys because we have a lot of them. I'd be like, and we count ospreys. It's like, so we go on Robert Moses and we end up at Point Lookout. I was like, how many ospreys did you see? He goes, 9. I said, I saw 23. He goes, no way. We go back. And then I show him.
Yeah.
He's like, Pop, how do you see that? I said, because I have trained myself not to look at the obvious. Anything other than that stands out. When I look at the ocean, what lives on the surface? Nothing. Nothing. Any disturbance, and I mean any disturbance, is a possible fish. It's something happening. So I've trained myself. I can look over water. I don't even look at it no more. I look for anything other than every day. The slightest disturbance, swirl. I watch everyone, and I got a great memory. So I watch everyone. You cast 50 yards. The guy next to cast 70 yards. He just cast in the wash. Whoever catches a fish, I can tell you where he cast and what he was using because I'm casting there next.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. You can force this is a learned thing. In other words, there's a sixth sense that goes with fishing, and I think that's nothing more than the tremendous amount of time on your water where your brain sees stuff that you're not aware of consciously. Like, when like the wind blows a certain way or clouds come in or the surf changes and your mind said that you caught fish on that before and you might not be consciously aware of it, but your subconscious is, and it might kick in and say, wait, I'm staying a little bit longer, or this lure worked on that, whatever. That's that sixth sense, and the more you're on the water, the more sixth sense grows. You know,
Yeah.
so you don't
It's all
always
about
pay
the
attention.
experiences.
Of course,
Build that
because
book.
all of us in life, that's what it does. And some people are much more aware of it, and some people aren't. You know,
Yeah.
but but everyone can train themselves to be more aware.
Right.
It's just a question of what you're looking for. In other words, not everybody wants to be a great fisherman. I mean, everybody wants to catch a big fish, but what are you willing to do to catch one? You
Right.
know what I mean? Are
Right.
you willing to sacrifice this or that? I had a guy one time, he always wanted to catch a really big bass and he never did. And I don't think many people fish. I can count them on my left hand. So he was moving to Florida and he was bothering me. Well, I got on a body of real big fish. They were all in the high 40 to mid 50-pound class. So I went over to Shasta. I said, listen, I know you're leaving. I said, next week. I said, you need to come tomorrow morning at 4 o'clock. I get you a real big fish. You know what he said to me? He said, I can't go tomorrow. He goes, can we go like Thursday? This was like Tuesday. I couldn't believe it.
And that is why he never caught a big bass. Right there.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. I just couldn't believe it. I was like, you got a 1 in a million shot. They're here now.
Yeah.
Okay. I never called him again. We were done. I'm done.
You can lead him to water, but you can't make him drink, man.
Yeah. Unbelievable. It was unbelievable. Yeah.
You can
But
lead
I've
him to
had,
water, but you can't make him fish.
that's right. But I wouldn't trade what I've done for anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really mean that too. I love what I do. I love catching these fish. I always have. Even today, at my age, when I'm on big fish, I can't sleep. I'm like a little kid. I'm twisted. Fucking, I'm up. Have a cup of coffee. I wait the 4 hours till I leave. Like I'm possessed. I'm like, I wa- I can't wait to get out there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And and to me now, it's nothing more than the hook set. That means I fooled you. Good enough. Yeah, you want to catch him. I fooled you. I got you. And then I
Yeah.
let him go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have any regrets?
No,
Do you regret that you haven't caught more fish? No, I'm just kidding.
no.
Joking.
I've caught so many. I have no regrets about it. I've had such a good time catching these fish. I met, and it's just, I've had some great stories, some great people I met, some good times, and then like, and most of all, it was like, I really made it in the world of bass fishing. Like, it amazes me today that at my age, I have a following of young people that really like me because young people usually are like, yeah, Pop, we know, we do it our way.
Yeah,
Blah, blah, blah,
right,
blah.
right. Yeah.
And these kids, they really like me. I mean, they come up, they shake my hand, they talk to me, they want me to sign autographs for them, and I'm like, That's pretty cool. But I'll help any of them catch fish. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I always tell people, I won't tell everyone everything I do, but I'll get you a fish. I've had a ton of guys that come to my seminars and on the side would ask me, and I'd be like, "What do you use?" We go over it. I said, "Listen, do this," and they come back next year and they're like, "Bill, I caught my first 40 or my first 50, because what you told me." So
That's
I'll always
beautiful.
do that. Yeah,
That's
I'll always
beautiful,
do that.
man.
Yeah.
Love it. So you give back to the community. You don't tell them
Yeah.
all your secrets, but you're definitely helping people.
Certain things you can't tell. But not for nothing, you can never catch a fish and I can't catch yours. In other words, if there was four of us standing on the beach right next to me and got a 50, that doesn't mean that fish would ever bit my line. He might have never bit my line.
Yeah.
So I can't say, gee, I get that. You caught my fish. No, you didn't. You caught a fish and you did whatever the reason was. He's your fish and you caught him.
Yeah.
And it's as simple as that. I don't have that jealousy, like, oh my God, they're going to catch my fish. You can't catch my fish. I catch what I catch. You catch what you catch.
It's that simple.
It is that simple. How do I know that fish? He didn't come across the beach. He came straight in from offshore and grabbed your line. How do I don't know any of that.
Yeah,
You know what I
right.
mean? Yeah, I have no idea. Yeah.
Don't you walk on me.